now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Today, we will talk to Dr. Robert Kiltz. I met Dr. Kiltz on the set of the Reverse Carnivore series, and from the moment I met him, I knew he was a highly spiritual human on a mission to help as many people as he can to heal from and, of course, prevent the many illnesses that plague our society today. He is the founder and director of CNY Fertility, one of the largest and most innovative fertility practices in the country, where he integrates both Western and holistic medicine into his clinical practice by treating the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. He does this by integrating into his fertility practice massage, which I can get every month. In fact, I do get a massage every month, by the way, doc. Acupuncture and yoga instruction with a patient-centered approach. He's also committed to doing this at 1/3 the cost of the national average for fertility care, which is important for a doctor like myself who works on the south side of Chicago, and cost is always a barrier. He also is a thought leader in the Keto Carnivore movement and believes that an animal-based dietary pattern dramatically improves mental clarity, fertility, and health, empowering people to live their best lives. In addition, he owns media channels. Dr. Kiltz appears regularly on numerous popular blogs and social media outlets, and was a TEDx speaker. That's still on my to-do list, but I'm glad you had a chance to do that. Dr. Kiltz is a diplomat of the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology and fellowship trained and board certified in reproductive endocrinology and fertility. And with that, Doc, I've been looking forward to this. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Dr. Hampton, thank you so much for the invitation. Have been so excited also, and I've been so impressed with what you're teaching out there and really caring for people in developing their best life.
Absolutely. Before we begin, I just realized in your intro, I did mention your author. So maybe share a little bit about what people can find. Like if they search you on Amazon, what type of books have you written about so far?
Well, my first book was called The Fertile Secret, which was written off The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, which basically the law of attraction, your mind and positivity leads everything. And when it comes to infertility, which is another inflammatory disorder, but mindfulness is so important. So that was my first book that I put together. And we have two versions of that. And then I wrote a few books on daily inspirations. About 20 years ago, I started writing my daily poetry and putting out a blog, an email to whoever would read it. And I do a short video on positivity and leading a better life. And I've got a few books on keto and carnivore, leading your best life. So I like to do a lot of spirituality, lifestyle improvements that are based on mindfulness, the food we eat, and the activities we participate in. So those are, I think, really important things. And you can also go online and you could go to kiltzcups.com and you could buy my pottery.
Wow.
So I do pottery and I sell those online. They're not on Amazon at this point, but they're out there. You go to drkiltz.com. That's a good place to find a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to know that you're kind of being comfortable doing some of your passions. I mean, who would have thought, right? I didn't even know that. So that's really kind of cool. And I appreciate you just extending your hand to the world. And I agree that most of what, if they could, in medical school, we were trained to diagnose the medical condition, treat it. And if we did that, we were really good. But what's missing sometimes is that whole person connection, and the fact that you touch on those spiritual aspects, the whole person may, in my opinion, be more valuable than the diagnosis itself, because you really want to walk with people and meet them where they are.
Well, the truth is we're not going to heal all disease, because ultimately we're all going to die of something. And how can we better learn to live with our diseases is one area that I think we need to focus on. Help people be more positive about whatever they have in life. My sister Marianne had diabetes since age 4. She died at 52 of heart failure. She was always positive. She never
Mm,
complained. And
yeah.
so our attitude has to be one of the things we learn to focus on and put forward in a more creative and positive way. And doctors need to learn how to do that better.
Yeah, and once we learn, because you can learn anything, then you can also teach patients how to do that, which is really awesome that they can actually not be that person they've always been. So thank you for that. And let's start to get to know you a little bit better. And one of the boxes that I uh, wanted to check was being a pilot. I did do exploration flights, and we just kind of looked at it and decided, it's not going to really fit our lifestyle and a few other factors. So I didn't follow through. Not that I won't in the future. But I know that you also decided to become a pilot. And I guess my question is, how have you been able to incorporate flying into your busy schedule?
Well, at age 55, and I'm 67, a friend called me one day and said, "Hey, I need a partner on an airplane." And I said, "Well, okay." He said, "It's not going to cost me very much," which obviously wasn't correct. But I used the airplane to go back and forth to my various offices in upstate New York. I sat in the back seats. And I was really fascinated by flying, by sitting there.
Hmm.
I never dreamed one day I'll be a pilot.
Right.
It was like someone called me one day and said, "Sure, I'll partner. We could use it to go back and forth." One of the pilots that was flying us back and forth became my mentor, and
Mm.
I learned to fly because of that. But I incorporated it in my life today in so many amazing ways. I go between my offices, my meetings. I can go to the West Coast or Florida quite easily, Texas. I have an office in Colorado. I'm working on an office in California. I just opened an office in Sarasota. So from upstate New York, I can go to these places quite readily, but it's not just for business. There's something amazing about learning to fly an airplane
Hmm.
and then piloting yourself. I've learned to
Hmm.
fly uh, Cirrus airplanes. I became an instrument rated pilot, and then learned to fly a jet. And I bought a jet a few years ago,
Wow.
which became once I had the airplane, it was like, okay, well, I want to learn that, and I want to learn
Hmm.
that.
Right.
And I was in my 60s when I learned to fly a jet, and I now fly a jet, and I have to go every year to retraining,
Hmm.
to putting you in a simulator. So constant learning is, I think, the most important thing. But basically, I use it where I can go visit my daughter, or I can go visit another professional colleague to
Hmm.
learn more, train more, and do more. And so it's a time machine. But
Yeah.
learning something like flying an airplane in a jet and going up to the flight levels at 41,000 feet, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, well, the few times I did my exploration flights, I was pretty amazed, and it did feel empowering and freeing. And so I do encourage anybody that don't let that number called your age be a barrier. I think about that female African American bodybuilder who I think she was in her 50s or 60s. She's now 87 or so, 86. And so there's never a point in your life when you can say, I can't do it. And then you have to let people like Dr. Kiltz and others inspire you. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a starting point. I also want to throw in another hobby of yours, which you kind of gave us a preview to, which is pottery and also painting. Where'd that come from?
Well, in high school, I couldn't get into a Spanish class; it was full. So I wound up finding a ceramics class with Mrs. Wong, John Marshall High School in Los Angeles, and I'd never done pottery or art really. So she taught me ceramics and throwing on the wheel. I actually caught on very quickly, which was interesting for me. I wasn't very academically inclined in high school. I was kicked out of school in a gang, couldn't read at a younger age. My father was in jail for a short term, but I learned some things through hardship. But Mrs. Wong taught me centering, confidence. I began to sell pottery to show at shows in Los Angeles in my teens. I bought a wheel, which I still have today, 50 years later, and I still throw on the wheel quite often. I've been in my pottery studio for the last weeks making. I do a lot of cups now. This is my kind of favorite
Hmm.
things. It's something that is personal. They're all different. None of them are the
Mm-hmm.
same, and something that everyone could get on and buy. But I don't do it for the money. I just do it because I love the creation.
Yeah.
And I learned
Yeah.
jewelry. And about 15 years ago, I started painting. And I
Mm.
went to the museum maybe 20 years ago in Paris to the Modern Art Museum. There was a black dot on a white canvas, and everyone was looking at it with amazement. And I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I started painting. I just bought acrylic, bought canvas. I started painting, and I don't do as much as I do pottery, but I have a lot of paintings up in my offices, and I give them away. Anyone can do anything if they simply do something and
Mm.
listen and learn from someone that's been doing it. That's one way to learn, but it's good to have an apprentice. But just buy the whatever the tools are and start doing it. That's the best way to learn. And I find that I continuously learn by observing others. Nowadays, now YouTube gives you so many opportunities to watch people who are
That's right.
doing something. And I'm a visual guy. If I like to see, and then
Mm-hmm.
I like to get my hands on it, and that's how I learned to do it. But art, we're artists. We're truly artists, and the
It's
more we practice art, the better.
Yeah, I think this randomness of how you just happen to get a phone call for the flying, you just happen to, you know what I mean? It's like, so it's a little random, but it reminds me that we need to be open to that randomness. Maybe that's a sign from above that this is something you should think about. I also feel like it kind of opens up more of who you are. And a lot of times there's gifts and talents that you have inside of you that you never realized because you kind of stayed in your little box. So I think anybody, again, listening, be open to being creative, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, doing some things you're not comfortable with. And I think that that'll open up all kinds of doors. And so many people in my life, whether it's a patient I know or a family member, are doing things that doesn't really fit who you thought they were. And certainly I wouldn't have known nothing about this had we not had this conversation. So I just appreciate that inspiration as well. I think also that it's clear that you're, as I suggested in the opening, very spiritual. You understand emotions. You try to meet people in those spaces. You understand finances. So you think about emotion, spiritual, financial. Where did those values come from?
Well, as a child, I was a doer. I love to do around the house. I love to help my mom and dad. I love to tinker with things and build things and take them apart. My brother and I used to do models all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
then we blew them up in our backyard with either firecrackers or a BB gun or something. But I've always a great family, much love. I worked as a young child, young, probably at like 10, 11. I started working at a boat launching ramp or mowing the lawn. And I love to work because I had ADHD. I couldn't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I couldn't read. And blame espouse the cause to my diet, by the way. And we'll talk more
Mm-hmm.
about that. But what I've learned is I'm a nonstop. And through that, I used to work at a boat launching ramp, Dodger Stadium, at a department store from 16 to about 22 in Hollywood, Los Angeles, the Broadway department store, which taught me service,
Mm-hmm.
customer service, which is something really important, I think, for all of us in life. And but through working, a great family, grandmothers, great support, brother and sister, that really helped me sort of find myself. And I found failure in high school. I failed out of a math class, although I was really great at math. And I was like, okay, you have to dedicate yourself to this. You have to do the
Yep.
work. And I went to junior college, LA City College, for 4 years because I broke a leg in my second year, decided I want to be a doctor. And I was inspired by it. And it's like, I couldn't read. Well, what am I going to do? Well, I learned to read. I focused. I put my
Mm-hmm.
time and attention to it because I'm passionate about the work and helping people.
I love that, and I'm happy you discovered the customer service. A lot of people in healthcare don't want to use customer type language, but we have found that you got to treat the patient like a customer. So I do appreciate that. Literally, ironically, I saw a patient with ADHD during a video visit the day of this recording, and I had just seen your video that you had just dropped about ADHD. It was a very brief video, so those who want to check out that video, just search Dr. Kiltz ADHD on YouTube. And I had just shared with her exactly what you shared in the video, and just to stabilize your brain, how important that is with your diet is so critical. So I'm really happy again. It's okay to use medicines if you need it, but man, there's other ways to do this. And for some people, you don't have to use medicine. Some people need a little medicine, some people don't. But I'm going to tell you, that diet it works a miracle. So let's go to the past. And some of the past is related to your OB-GYN practice. Now, as a family doctor at West Suburban Hospital in Oak Park, where I trained, I did a fellowship called Maternal Child Health. And that allows family doctors to do, in preparation to go into rural communities, do C-sections, tubals, DNCs, and things like that. So I was really a family doctor who was basically taking care of babies after I deliver them and taking care of the moms during their pregnancy and just being trained to handle emergencies in a rural community. So I really miss being a family doc doing OB. I miss it, man. So you're more of a fertility doc now, and I'm just curious, how much do you miss watching those bundles of joys come out?
Well, that was the reason I went into OBGYN, because I loved delivering babies and take care of moms for the 9 months.
Yeah.
And so I definitely miss it. I haven't been doing it for nearly 20 years. But when I started my practice 25 years ago, I was still delivering babies, doing gynecology, and started a fertility practice. So, you try to do everything, but at some point, I just couldn't keep up with the delivering babies and the OBG and the fertility treatments at the same time. So
Yeah.
I sort of gave up one thing to focus more on another, the helping people suffering from being infertile. But I always have loved it. And it's just nothing better than seeing that beautiful human baby be born. And more natural, I think, is something that I liked to focus on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something we need to focus on and help people find it. And talking about carnivore, I think carnivore aids in more natural delivery.
Yeah.
And pregnancies, I think, are healthier by going carnivore.
Well, let's go towards carnivore, since we're both carnivores. You've been doing it longer than me. I've been doing it for about a year, and you've been doing it much longer. I just have found that as a person who wants to thrive, I feel my best with that dietary pattern. And for those who are checking us out, we did a video short on YouTube you should be able to find that basically talks about how why two docs would choose carnivore, because to be in a large health system like me, we are considered unicorns, aberrations, oddities, etc. So let's introduce the audience to why you landed with a carnivore dietary pattern.
Well, I'm Italian upbringing, pretty much a standard American diet with lots of different nationalities in food preparation. Loved it. As I said, I suffered from ADHD, dyslexia. I had bowel problems and migraines as a child. And through the years, it just, becoming a doctor, these are just normal things that human beings experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I focused a lot on Atkins about 20 plus years ago. I ran a lot to be healthy. And I found a little bit better, but I still had bowel bleeding, arthritis, kidney stones, and migraines, and a lot of upper respiratory inflammation. And at one point, as I first started with meditation and yoga and things like that in my medical practice for my patients with infertility, one of my patients was doing paleo diet who got pregnant. And that's when I began about 20 years ago to say, okay, well, what is paleo diet? I started reading about it and I started doing it. And then I found keto and I found Maria Emmerich and I started doing it and I started sharing it. And I started reading and digging deeply into all of it. And then I found carnivore personally. And I'm like, okay, there's a guy who eats only meat. He's ripped, he looks healthy, and he doesn't exercise. That one's for me. Again, I was
Yeah.
spending so much time exercising, and all my joints were hurting, my
Right.
back was hurting. I had to stop exercise because I pulled a muscle or something. And Carnivore is absolutely the top of the line for lions. And I learned it from my patients essentially, and then experiencing it myself, and then sharing it and writing about it with everyone I can, because
That's
I'm
right.
like a little kid. We're like, wait a minute, my kidney stones, migraines, bowel bleeding, arthritis, psoriasis, everything's gone.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's again, if it was a drug, it would be a blockbuster, and the CEO would retire after the first year because they would make so much money. So, but thankfully, it's not a drug. It's something you can do by simply what you put in your mouth and on your plate. Now, people who also know you for fertility may have a very simple question, which is, how in the heck can a person who struggled with fertility most of their lives change their diet to carnivore or keto and magically it happens? So, is there anything you can say about the mechanism of why that's true?
Inflammation is the cause of all disease, and infertility is just another disease.
Yeah.
So, inflammation, in my opinion, is caused by five things. But if you think about inflammation, redness, swelling, pain, dysfunction of the cell or the organ, and then failure. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I hit on most of those. But and essentially, inflammation is caused, in my opinion, by five main things. The leading thing is plant sugars.
Mm-hmm.
Plant sugars glycate, and they damage every cell of your body.
Every
For
cell.
some reason, some people have heart problems or brain problems or kidney problems or liver problems or reproductive problems. Why some people over others? That's the mystery that we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
10% of people who smoke cigarettes get lung cancer. Well, why doesn't everyone? Well, everyone gets something, but when and why and how, that's a little bit of the mystery.
That's right.
The second cause of most inflammation and thus infertility are plant chemicals.
Mm.
Heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, and caffeine are plant chemicals. So is estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone.
Mm.
The birth control pill and the abortion pill are both made from plants.
Mm.
Okay, so these are chemicals that we ingest when we eat primarily a plant based diet. Now, again, it doesn't make sense, but it does if you step back and go heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, caffeine are deadly chemicals for the human body. They come from plants.
Right.
The third cause is plant antigens. So, an antigen is a glycoprotein. That means a
Mm-hmm.
protein with the sugar on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the sugar tends to be the inflammatory cause,
Mm-hmm.
not the protein.
Right.
Everyone thinks it's a protein. It's the sugar. Lectins, oxalates, phytates are leading plant antigens.
Mm.
And if you think about it, how many people do you know have an anaphylactic reaction to a piece of meat?
Never.
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 Fish, shellfish is there, probably secondary to the microbes and the toxins they
Mm-hmm.
produce,
Mm-hmm.
probably. And then interesting enough, alcohol.
Mm.
Alcohol is a product of a bacteria, yeast, and a plant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now when you eat plants and fiber, they come with the bacteria and the yeast in your gut, in your
Mm-hmm.
mouth, in your esophagus, in your GI tract. You're fermenting plants in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're making alcohol.
Mm.
Heat, gas, alcohol, methane are toxins from fermentation in your gut. A plant-based diet and a fiber-filled diet is basically fermenting, and you're making alcohol. And so when you feed your child sugars, you're inducing alcohol production. You're wondering why their brain isn't working so well and why everyone has brain fog.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
The fifth
Mm-hmm.
leading cause is excessive exercise.
Wow. I
And
like
I
that.
highlight excessive.
Yeah.
We're meant to move but we're not meant to constantly run every single day. Deadly.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that makes me feel happy because I only exercise 2 or 3 times a week. And I just think recovery, particularly in a clinical practice where I have a lot of seniors, I say, listen, I want you to move, but if you move too much, you'll be in the ER just as quick, if not quicker, because you haven't allowed for recovery. Jamie Foxx said, don't blame it on the alcohol, but in this case, we're going to blame it on the alcohol. And I hope he's doing better because I know he is in trouble in terms of his health. But you use that term glycation. And I think the most important part of that is you said every cell in the body, which basically can be interpreted simply saying that too much glucose floating around in your body can then lead to all this inflammation and metabolic dysfunction, which is why we feel that it's the cause of most chronic medical conditions. And so it should be fairly obvious, but I just think reminding people that if you have a diet that's only things that turn into sugar, you can probably overload the body and make it toxic. So I think that's really important to message. So let's talk a little bit about going back to the South Side of Chicago and how I really want to serve all the people in my community. But I probably don't even think about fertility treatment because their first thing is cost. I did a little bit of a search before we recorded, and I just said, what does IVF cost? What does it cost? And the ranges were wide, anywhere from 10,000 to 24,000. So my question to you is, how did you become an outlier and made this type of treatment more affordable? Because it's just something you think the rich folk can do, but not the average folk.
Well, I'm sure, like you didn't go into medicine thinking I'm going to make a lot of money.
Right, exactly.
I went into medicine because I wanted to help people. My
You got that
sister
right.
suffered, and I've seen suffering, and so that's why I went into medicine. I grew up with no money. We were on welfare at
Mm,
times, no health insurance for many times. As I mentioned, my father was in jail for a short amount of time. It was good for him, by the way. He learned a lot, and he
mhm.
connected with God again, so that was great. But ultimately, I was delivering babies and getting paid $2,000 a delivery, 9 months of care.
Okay, right.
Started my IVF practice in 1997, my own actually. And I'm like, okay, actually before that, a couple of years, I was like, well, if I make $2,000 for 9 months of care, maybe $2,000 is the right amount of money to charge for IVF. And that's what I
Right.
started out as.
Cool.
We're now about $4,000 for an average IVF standard price. There are a few add-ons you can do and a few medications add on, but I never went into thinking I'll just do a whole bunch of cases and do
Mhm,
mass cases and volume. I started off slow, and I
mm,
was I was making a good living
mhm,
on that.
mhm,
Now, and it's interesting because CNY Fertility has grown to one of the 10 leading IVF centers in America, volume wise, and I think outcome wise. And a lot of it is because of our mission, affordability, access, integrating Eastern Western medicine and quality. And
mm,
again, we can help people in ways that they never come see me, they get pregnant. But IVF, look, what's the most important thing in life? It's reproduction,
mhm,
it's family building. That's the most important thing. And so the fact that it's out of reach for so many people suffering, and it may be 85% of people in America that need fertility care and IVF cannot afford it.
mm.
And that's not right.
That's not
And so,
right.
whatever I can do to help affordability, quality access. I'm good. That's my mission in life. And I'm 67. One of my mentors and people I've just really admired is Georgina and Howard Jones,
Mhm,
who started the first IVF in America at age 65. So I'm just 67. I'm just getting going.
mm. Yeah, and I again, just thinking about the people who may have access to this, I'm curious about so when you integrate other modalities and that leads to reduced inflammation, it seems that that would then equal when I do my Western treatment protocol, the success rate would be higher. Have you seen that just in general, or what would you say?
Well, I'm not a measurer. I look at individual outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems with science is looking at statistics and data, which often could be misleading.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just seen so many individuals conceive and deliver a baby through either acupuncture, meditation, prayer, massage, chiropractic, and then integrating things like nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Some supplements may be helpful, and mindfulness. And is it more? Well, I don't have a good random collection of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hard one to
Right.
know. But I'm a scientist, and we've written papers, and we talk at conferences. But a lot of my focus is now on how can I help you with this information? Because if you're looking for the scientific proof that carnivore cures everyone, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to find it.
Right.
Ain't there?
Nope. Hasn't been done yet. In fact, let's go there. Let's go backwards a little bit and think about low carb, keto, and carnivore. Somebody may hear this episode and really get excited about their fertility prospects, right? So when you're in front of people, because if you look at the definitions of low carb, it can be as high as less than 130 for low carb. It could be, it's a big range, right? So when you're when somebody's in front of you, how do you approach their journey towards carb restriction all the way down to carnivore? Does it just depend, or do you try to get them as close to carnivore as possible in the beginning?
I like to keep it simple because I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what a gram is. I have no idea. Right. I
Right.
basically say, okay, I have a fatty ribeye steak. It's about 1-to-1 fat to protein. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The red stuff is protein, the white stuff is fat. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how I look at it, right?
Okay.
But the filet mignon in general is pretty lean. A piece of chicken breast is pretty lean, but a ribeye steak or a 80-20 a burger might have a lot of white stuff. And so I'd say in general, if you can get a 1-to-1 white to red,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the way to go. But no one knows that exact value, unfortunately. I just find it eat animal products and don't eat plant products.
Mm-hmm.
You can eat plant products from time to time. You may be fine,
Mm-hmm.
but the anaphylactic reactions, acute and chronic illness, starts from that.
Yeah.
And so if you can eliminate that, I do a little bit of French fries from time to time and maybe my ice cream, but 99% of what I do is my steak. I typically do one meal a day. But again, you can be healthy and live a long time on a plant-based diet. But if you're sick and suffering, the animal-based diet, I think, is the game changer personally.
That's
And interesting, paleo, keto, and carnivore, what are they?
mm-hmm.
Technically, if you said carnivore, it's an animal-based diet. You might eat only lean meat
Mm-hmm.
and eat very little fat. Well, that's not good for you because
Right.
protein poisoning is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And keto, paleo, you can eat plants, but 80% of your calories should come from fat, technically, in
Mm-hmm.
both of
Mm-hmm.
those areas.
Right.
And I'd say it the same thing with carnivore. But since fat contains twice the calories of a protein, amino acid, or a sugar, then in general, weight to weight, 1-to-1, it's going to be about 1-to-1. And if you did fat, half your calories, and the other half were a combination of amino acids and sugars, and you ate only one meal a day,
Mm-hmm.
you might actually be okay
Mm-hmm.
as long as those sugars are simple
Mm-hmm.
and not complex, and they're not providing all the chemicals and the antigens that come with it. So
Yep. Yep.
it's simple, in my opinion. Carnivore is the top of the line.
Mm-hmm.
We have zero requirement to ever eat a plant.
Mm-hmm.
Plant sugars are never required, really. So again, if I choose 80 grams, 130 grams, whatever that gram is, I might be okay, but I might not. If you're working to eliminate a metabolic disorder, diabetes, hypertension, even cancer, I believe is a metabolic disorder, you might look at carnivore as the first thing that you should be focusing on.
Nice. And just as a point of clarity for my audience. I think they already know this, but it's, no essential carbohydrate to live. So when the doctor says you don't have to eat carbs, that's biochemically a fact. So, and again, that lion out there and that tiger who does not eat plants, for some reason, they still find some glucose in their body because the protein and fat has a way to be converted. So let's not let that confuse you. Let's be biochemists, at least for that talking point. And I think that's really important.
Can I make one other comment?
Absolutely.
When you eat meat, every cell of the meat contains amino acids, fatty acids, and sugars. So the whole point is when you're eating anything you eat, typically has all those things. They just have them in different proportions.
Mm-hmm.
But I always like to say plants versus animals because the plant is never required and the plant is made up of mostly sugar.
Yes.
Where the animal is made up mostly of amino acids and fatty acids. But remember, a cell is made, the cell wall and all the cell walls are fat.
Yeah.
So we're really, when you eat meat, and any cell, even a plant cell, has some fat in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good, and I appreciate the framing. A little clarity is always in order. You are carnivore, and you have a very simple dietary approach, as do I. But we also have some carnivores that they just can't go without their coffee. So, what's your thoughts on adding coffee to that dietary pattern versus the hardcore bacon, steak, eggs, salt, nothing else? What's your thoughts on coffee? Because that's such a big deal for people.
Well, I've been a coffee addict for many, many years. As a child, I started drinking coffee as medicinal, actually. And I used it for headaches for years. In medical school, I was like, wow, I got to drink this stuff because you got to be up till 1
You got
a.m.
that right.
studying. Yeah, it was the savior. I went off coffee about a year ago because I wanted to do something hard, and it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I just cold turkey. I've actually had about 5 cups of coffee over the last 3 months. I do mostly a little bit of decaf from time to time, but very minimally or not at all. And coffee is a plant product. It contains some toxins. It contains a drug, caffeine, that, do we need it? Well, we use it in our world today because we're living in the wrong world. Because most carnivores sleep a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They don't exercise they don't exercise at all. And so I find myself feeling better, but I do when I get tired, I take a nap. I do a 10-minute nap, meditation and prayer. But coffee and tea, I think they're okay. They're not like, oh my God, you better be off that. But if you find yourself like you can't go without, well, then maybe you should go without.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what an interesting comment. Oh, instead of doing coffee, nap, meditation, in simple answer. I like that. And I just think we live in such a busy place. What I tend to do is get enough sleep. When I can't get enough sleep and I know I have to be, I got like 25 to 30 patients to see. Those are the days when I do it, but I try not to make that the routine, especially when you have a history of an irritable tummy. Probably not the best idea for a person with that kind of history. So thank you for that. Real quick, some people, as you have suggested, can live and do okay eating plants, clearly. And then there are times when you can't. Dr. Anthony Chaffee is famous for saying plants are trying to kill you. So when you think about like a person in front of you, that's funny. Plants that kill, that is funny. So there you go. So you're right on the same page. So what do you do? So if you have a person in front of you who is a plant-based person, you check their, appropriate labs, they're thriving from what you can tell, or maybe they're just really good at supplementing. There's no evidence that it's harming them. Is there a way to say, okay, I guess for that person, it's okay?
Well, when my friend Dave Kilmer died at age 52, he was one of my best friends, my cadaver partner in medical school.
Mm.
He was healthy. He loved to exercise. He was just such an amazing young man. When he called me with lymphoma and he died 3 months later, why did my healthiest friend die? Okay, so now, how and when you're going to die, none of us know.
That's right.
Okay. But what I've learned is that glycation and the chemicals and the antigens and the alcohol production of plants in our gut is the cause of almost all disease.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to reduce the risk of disease, I think carnivore, and mostly carnivore, is the best thing we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you come to me sick, chances are you're not a carnivore unless you just started being carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time plant-based diet. And my sister died at 52, about the same time as Dave, Maria. She had diabetes since age 4. Well, did the red meat cause her disease, or did likely the lectins, oxalates, phytates, and the sugars, glycate, cause her disease?
Mm-hmm.
That's likely it. And the more you dig deeper into the poisonous plants, you'll be like, wow, this is amazing. So if someone comes to me and says, well, I feel great, well, maybe you feel great, but maybe you'll feel greater on carnivore.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. Speaking of feeling great, I was listening to an African American who's been on some of the plant-based documentaries talk about that, plants were the key to his healing. And one of the things he said was, when I shifted to a plant-based diet, I felt great. And my brain is trying to help everybody understand, when you do a shift from the standard American diet to any diet, you're going to feel great. The question is the science and, the the biochemistry supporting that approach. And for me, I just think that we kind of randomly do a Google search. We find, okay, what's the best diet, wherever we land, and then we kind of get indoctrinated into that diet, as I did when I was a vegetarian for 8 years. Again, I see some people thriving. I see more people thriving with this animal-based diet, and I just think we have to be, careful in terms of, what's the first thing that's presented to us. And I just think that just saying that I feel better because that worked, and then, this idea that you can be better, as you've suggested, and you not even realize it. Because when I was a plant-based guy, I thought that I was fine, except I was gassy, bloated, and all those other things that come from eating that way. But man, when I switched to this dietary pattern, oh my God, it was like, wow, I didn't know I could feel better. It's like somebody put my glasses on for the first time. I was like, oh my God, didn't know I couldn't see. Now I can't see. So again, it's just about, there's levels to this. And I think that we should never settle. We should always be looking for better. Some of my patients also complain that they're destined to be sick because everybody in their family got sick. Everybody in my family was diabetic. Everybody in my family had heart disease. So I think it's important that we just emphasize again, does your genetics destine you to chronic medical conditions? Or what would you say to a person who comes to you with that kind of feedback?
Well, the DNA of most organisms are very similar, but you're not a bird or you're not a fish. You can't breathe underwater and you can't fly. So genetically, your DNA says you're a land animal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at our historic evolution, we were meat eaters. We were animal eaters. Okay. So you really can't find any significant evidence that we were primarily plant eaters. So your DNA says you're a lion, not a pig, cow, or sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue and say, well, you're just putting your body in the wrong environment. No wonder you're sick, because your DNA says you're an ancient hunter. We're like wolves and lions. We came out of the trees not to eat the grass eaters, eat grass, but eat the grass eaters. So by eating the grass eaters, we learned how to hunt. We learned how to open the cranium, break the bones, eat the bone marrow. How long did we do this? I have no idea how long you did it. But if you look at the cave paintings, there's not a lot on planting fruits and vegetables. It's on hunting. So I always start by this simplicity because people come to me because they have a medical problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I talk to everyone online, but people come to you sick with a problem and they come to me because of infertility. I'm like, well, if you're so well and healthy, well, why aren't you reproducing naturally? Because you're not.
Right.
And I look at reproduction as the canary in the coal mine. You feel great, you look great, but you're not reproducing. Well,
Yeah.
you're only born to reproduce. Nothing else matters. Being a doctor doesn't matter, a pilot, whatever your job in life is, it's unimportant compared to being a mom or a dad, a
That's right.
parent.
That's right. Wow, that's impressive. And again, just being able to, in simple terms, explain to a person, yeah, there's something wrong, and here's a potential solution is compelling. We have a lot of work to do to get
Yeah.
these messages out, and I'm trying to do my part. You're doing your part. Anything that you see as, we need to do better at this to help spread this message that animal-based dietary pattern is the diet that more humans should be undertaking to be successful.
One human being at a time.
Mm.
Because ultimately, the way of the world is the way of the world. You
Hmm.
can fight pigs, but pigs like mud. So you better like mud. I think it was Mother Teresa. She never would fight against anything.
Hmm.
She only went to support for something. So she
Hmm.
wasn't she wasn't one to protest. She just went out and helped people that were in need.
Mm.
Food, water, clothing, shelter,
Mm.
love and support. That's the same thing we really should focus on here. I'm not out there to push against anyone's agenda for plant-based diet. I just, as a physician and a parent, a partner,
Hmm.
my job in life is to share something I've learned that is radical and simple. Occam's
Hmm.
razor says the simple answer is the one. Carnivore is simple. I eat
Mm.
pretty much the same thing every day. Most animals in the world eat the same thing pretty much every day. They're not wondering what am I going to eat. I need variety, and going out to eat every day.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
don't make it difficult. That's really it. But ultimately, I think what we're all doing, and it's amazing how many people are suddenly being attracted to this way. Because at 67, and you're probably in your early 50s or younger, and
Hmm.
you probably feel like, wow, I feel amazing. And you're right. I've been chastised at the hospital I work at, and some people say, Dr. Kiltz, don't talk about that. I'm saying I won't. And then they say, well, what can I do on nutrition? I'm like,
Hmm.
um, keto or carnivore. I'll give you both of those things, and fasting, by the way.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
if we can each be a teacher, and then as I've learned to do this, and people look at me and go like, "What are you doing?" And it just keeps on growing. That's the very best thing we can do.
That's nice. I like that, and it made me, one of the things as a doctor who's trying to share this message, because I don't know everything, I feel like an imposter sometimes. I see
Yeah.
myself on the stage. I'll be going to Keto Orlando. I'll be going to Symposium for Metabolic Health. I'll be going to Keto Palooza on the stage. I'm the expert. Sometimes you feel like an imposter because we're all kind of constantly learning. As a leader in a large health system, exactly. As a leader in a large health system, I feel like an imposter. As a dad, sometimes I feel like an imposter. As a husband, so what would you say to anybody out there who suffers from imposter syndrome? What would you say to them to help them feel less like an imposter?
Read the Bible.
Mm, that's it.
Have faith. Have faith in God first. And when you look in the mirror, there she, he, it is. Ultimately, we're all afraid. We're all feeling like we don't know as much as that other person. We have
Hmm.
anxiety and fear of imposter syndrome, all of us. I
Hmm.
mean, I grew up that
Mm.
way. I wasn't I didn't score well on tests. I was always last to lead, and I was the first to follow. But I've switched it around. I believe because of Carnivore, my brain has become more open. But I
Mm.
read Neville Goddard, I read Jesus Christ, I read the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, I read all of the text messages, which ultimately all say the same: have faith in God, and God is within us.
Wow. I love the fact that I asked that question because I think so many people are looking at others and thinking, I'll never be where they are. I can't achieve what they've achieved. And I just think it's important that we give ourselves some grace and realize that the person who comes to the stage before you has the same insecurities, person that's coming after you, and that's just life, and it's okay. So I just wanted to throw that out there because as we struggle to achieve our health, we may even get to those goals. I have patients who are still thinking they're 100 pounds heavier. They just don't want to accept that they've actually gotten to this new place, this metabolically healthy body. So I think we have to constantly retrain our brains. And then one of the best ways to do that, as you have suggested, is knowledge and feeding the brain and feeding the brain. And then you add to that faith and looking at a higher source to help guide you. So I love all of that. And again, as we kind of wrap up, I want to figure out what your focus is going to be over the next 12 months. For me, it's about protecting the nest, right? So rather it's the nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, the trauma recovery, the how are we thinking, the relationships, avoiding organisms and pollutants, the emotions, the life experiences on that whole spectrum of nest and rope. Where will Dr. Kiltz focus over the next 12 months?
Well, you have to be either jump or be pushed out of the nest at some point.
Right.
You don't grow, you don't learn to fly unless you leap.
Yes.
And I always say you can step off the cliff and either ground will show up or the wings will unfurl. Because you have to have faith in wherever you're going, whatever you're doing. But doing something hard every day will build easy.
Mm.
And everyone's DNA is pretty much the same. I don't care your education, your social, cultural, political, economic status, it doesn't matter. And this is why I do a lot of writing and a lot of reading and listening to books on positivity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
inspired by people like yourself, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, Jesus, Muhammad, Moses. All these historical humans have shared the way that from nothing, something is created.
Mm.
And so be afraid and do it anyway. But I watched videos. I watch people like yourself like this. Wow, this is amazing. This is
Mm-hmm.
interesting because we want to see someone that we think looks like us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Came from a background. Again, I kicked out of school in a gang, couldn't read, father in jail. Maybe that will help someone that's been there.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Right.
and we'll say, well, like that guy did something. But again, I'm nothing special. Everyone is something special.
Yeah, I like
Or I
that.
should say we all are, right?
That's
That's
right.
it. And so you're right. It gets back to that brain that thinks I'm no good at this because quite commonly the message is what you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you don't have the right degree or pedigree or DNA or whatever it is that ultimately is not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so on my books and on my website, I list a lot of books that I've read.
Mm-hmm.
Autobiography, spirituality, history. I like a lot of science stuff. And so it's never give up, but at the same time, always give it up.
Right. I love that. Hey, that's a nice way to wrap up, and I appreciate that. Appreciate your authentic expression of your faith, your dedication to other human beings, and man, if we can just be at a stage in life where we're giving service to the world, it's a much better place. So I appreciate that, and we need more people to do that. But for those who are doing it, just shout out to all of them. And hopefully, as people heal themselves, they'll have more bandwidth. That's one of the beauties of achieving metabolic health is that you feel so good. You want to go out and not only spread the gospel of healing, but help other people because now you feel like helping other people heal. So I love that. Let's wrap up. We started with some resources that you shared about your book. So we know Amazon's one of the spots. I'll be joining you on your YouTube channel soon. So that'll be another spot. Where else can people reach you, my friend?
Well, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all these modalities are there. Just Google Dr. Kiltz. People text me all the time on my cell phone, but WhatsApp and all these things are there. But mostly just go to drkiltz.com
Yep.
and share your story.
Yeah.
That's important that we share your story. What are you suffering from? What are your successes? All these things, because we're all learning from each other. I'm as special as you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we have to see each other. Judge not lest ye be judged. But if you judge with love, more things unfold. And so I'm just grateful to be here sharing. And the more we do this, the more light unfolds in this universe.
That's right. Well, thank you for your time, your energy. I'm so thrilled that I had a chance to connect with you personally in Costa Rica, and now we're doing this and we'll be doing more. So thank you so much. And for those who are checking out this episode, who would have thought that an animal-based diet would be the key to dramatically improving your mental clarity, your fertility, and obviously many other metabolic health conditions. So thankfully, for the many people, who have, the dream of becoming biological parents, right? There's an answer, there's a way, there's a key to your success, and it probably is going to be based on what you put in your mouth. So I'm thankful for Dr. Kiltz and his simple approach to lifestyle changes, whether it's a massage or what you eat. I encourage you to check out his books, his YouTube channel, and the other resources that we'll have a link to in the notes. Let's work together. As Dr. Kiltz has suggested, let's work together to share the good news that we all can live our very best by feeding our bodies high-quality animal-based food. So for those who are checking us out, I thank you again. I appreciate you finding value in what I do here, and just hope that it is adding to your life and getting you a little closer to where you want to be. So until we have another episode, I only ask that you continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. And thanks again, Doc, for being here.
My pleasure. God bless you.
You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.